Hello and welcome back to Amá CONVERSA. Today we have a part 2 with Joseph Arruda, and he is the artist behind the beautiful mural of Cinco Chagas, Five Wounds Church at Petiscos, which is a new restaurant downtown made and owned by the same people that power Adega, which is the only restaurant in San Jose that has a Michelin star and is from my hometown of Little Portugal. So of course, I'm super excited about Petiscos. The first time we talked with Joseph, we went into depth about his experience with doing the mural for Petiscos. So we talked a little bit about that. And today we'll give a very roundabout summary about that experience. And if you would like to know more about it, please check out his first part 1, Joseph Arruda. I believe it was in January. So go ahead and go back and you can check that out. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper about him and his experiences with being Portuguese, because I know that Joseph was involved with one of our halls for many, many years. So he has a lot of funny stories about that. Not only, he has some memorable experiences growing up Portuguese. He may have a little story or two about his family or something funny that happened. And then we're also going to dive a little bit deeper about him and music, because he and I, we've connected with music. We have little conversations besides this here, what you see. And we've talked a little bit about music, and I learned that he used to play music himself. So we'll get into that as well. So Joseph, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's a nice sunny Friday, so we're can't be bad.
No, of course not. It's preparing us for the weekend. And I always used to call myself, when I used to work, because it's approaching 1 year of being home for me. This is a first for me because I've been working full time since I was 18 years old. And this is the first time I've ever had a break. So I've loved this year. And I used to call myself a weekend warrior. So even though I don't work anymore, I still look forward to the weekend, because my husband works, so obviously on the weekend it's our time. But anywho, it is a beautiful sunny day. We have been, everyone knows this is pre-recorded, but this week, as me and Joseph were talking about, we have had some weird weather in California, especially Northern California. We've had the rain, the hail, the sun. I've even went to the snow. So it's like we're experiencing all the seasons in 1 week. So our bodies and our minds are just everywhere this week. So bear with us. But Joseph, you have some beautiful abstract art behind you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The mural would probably be an example of like representational art that I do. It's clearly stuff people recognize.
Yes.
But I've done a couple decades worth of abstract paintings. Are usually pretty expressionistic. I use a bunch of different mediums. I'm like, what do I have in my apartment?
Yeah, a lot of beautiful things.
Yeah, it's just people are like, oh, you put your own work up in your apartment. I'm like, yeah, where else am I going to store it?
Exactly.
Yeah, my studio is full. My apartment is full, and then I probably have a few my folks' place, and actually I have a bunch that are sitting in one of the downtown beer shops that's currently closed up. So
yes,
grab it. So there's I guess they're technically being stored there since no one can actually see them.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I do a lot of abstracts, different kinds of themes. I've been doing a series for the last 3-4 years, off and on, loosely based conceptually on. Like looking at them, you wouldn't necessarily think Portuguese, although maybe some people would, because they're based off of the works of Fernando Pessoa.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, Livro de Sossego, the Book of Disquiet, which is one of my favorite books. Fernando's a unique, so he's one of my favorite Portuguese writers, just period. But I think even amongst kind of in literature, he's just so weirdly unique. He's the only author I am aware of that wrote in what he called heteronyms. So at the time that he died, people knew about, I guess, 3 or 4 different identities that he wrote under, which, unlike other authors who write under pseudonyms, where it's like, oh, I'm Danielle Steele and I write under some other name, or Anne Rice writes under another name, so they can write different kinds of stuff. He constructed whole personalities. Like he created one author, Alberto Caeiro, and then he created another author with a different personality to critique that author.
Oh my God, we're learning a lot of new things today. That's for sure.
It's really interesting. In European literary circles, he's got an amazingly high reputation, but once again in the U.S., largely unknown. But he wrote in English and French and Portuguese because he had spent part of his education in South Africa. So his writing style and his approach is kind of just really, I mean, it's weirdly abstract in its own way. So I kind of used reading his stuff as a jump off. He's probably the only literary source that I've ever used for visual work. It just, the way he constructs poems.
It inspires your art.
Yeah, I
mean,
the
only author that's inspired your art is what you're saying.
Yeah, and just, you know, and he's so intrinsically Portuguese. I mean, for people who enjoy José Saramago, like he wrote a book basically inspired by Fernando Pessoa, where he takes one of Pessoa's personalities or heteronyms, and it stays alive for a year after the actual death of Fernando. It's a really interesting story, but he's an interesting author. A lot of the abstracts are based off of stuff that's kind of inspired by him. I actually just like the word disquiet. It seems like such a Portuguese thought. It's like, are you angry? No. Are you upset? No. What are you? I am disquiet.
Dude, why does that sound like a fado for me? That sounds like a fado right there.
You know, maybe so. I've been doing a lot of that. There's about, I think, 38 works in the series so far, and I'll kind of keep doing them until I run out of gas. So I've been, one of the things of being at home more is you know, I have found that, well, I don't like watching too much TV, and I'm not going out to, you know, the live venue or the bar or what. So I guess I'm going to read some more books. So I've actually been rereading through a bunch of random material, mostly about Portuguese authors or about Portugal. So it's been interesting the last year in that regard.
I'm gonna have to get with you in regards to what is it that you're reading, because I want to read more as well. And like you, I find myself not watching TV at all. Like, I don't even know why. I have a package where I have the internet and the TV, but I don't even know. We don't watch the TV really. We just watch it for Emilia. She watches her little cartoons and that's about it. But I was gonna say, yes, your apartment is filled with your artwork, but that is totally normal, like you said, because my father just started to paint during quarantine, and like you, his house is covered in paintings right now, but it's beautiful. And so is my house. The paintings that I have in my house are done by him. So
great. I can't sell my abstracts to my family because my mother doesn't understand them. But
oh my God. Just like, oh, see, okay,
that's not too far off. I mean, it's like they have a couple of my paintings in the house, but they're mostly paintings of other members of the family, which I'm cool with. I enjoy doing it, but you know, it's one of those things where it's like my mother will look at the abstract and go, "That's nice." Yeah,
pretty. I like the colors. I like the colors. So that leads me, now that we're talking about your family, can you tell me something, maybe like a funny memory, something Portuguese, maybe you learned a Portuguese word, or maybe you taught them an English word that they didn't know and it was a funny experience, anything funny in Portuguese?
I think growing up first gen, I mean, to be honest, like at the time, it's probably just kind of harrowing and weird, but it's all you know. And then when you get older and you kind of get a chance to reflect back, you realize that growing up Portuguese, you know, like first, second gen, is a sitcom. Like
yes. Oh my God.
I grew up with a bunch of things that totally made sense to me on a day-to-day basis. Anything that happened absolutely made perfect sense. And when I stepped back, I went, "The hell was that?" Right? I was actually
yes. Talk about your lunches, your childhood lunches at school. You always have
Okay,
the
I think
best lunch.
everyone always has like some kind of lunchtime story. If you're like a particular ethnic group, I don't think Portuguese is any different. Like, you get to school, some some American kids got his PB&J sandwich, or maybe they've got like, and then they're looking at me and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "It's called verde." What is that? I'm like, "It's soup." Like, I don't know what that is. I'm like, "It's soup."
It's
What
so
do you do with
delicious.
it? It's like, I think it's great. Although now as an adult, I'm like, why is kale? Why is that soup the only thing we use kale for?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh no, we just want it for soup. Everything else, it's crap.
Oh my
Uh,
God, it's so funny.
or they'd see bifanas and they're like,
What
"What
is
is that?" I'm like, "It's a sandwich." Like they would always look at it and kind of go, "That's weird." Or certainly when you tell them like, "Oh, I eat octopus," ew.
Oh yes, of course, of course.
Uh,
I
or
never wanted anyone to know that I ate octopus. Trust me. Didn't want anyone to know that about me. But now
no,
I love it. I
I
have
always
it in my freezer right now.
yeah, but it's great, and it's just like you just there were actually here's an interesting story. I do remember being God must have been like maybe 10, 12ish, right around there. So like most Portuguese people, you got the garage. What is the garage for? It's a second kitchen because no one
Yep.
puts a car in there. That's what a driveway's for.
Yes.
So,
We like
so,
to
yeah,
take risks. We like to take risks, right?
so
Yeah, leave my car in the driveway. That's fine.
my parents, being typical Portuguese parents, like they tiled the floor and they put an industrial sink in there and there's an oven there. So once a year, you go out to a pig farm out in the East Bay, maybe San Leandro. You get a pig, cut long ways, you bring it home, the family butchers it together. It's an event.
Yeah, and no, truly.
And growing up Portuguese, this is perfectly normal.
Yep.
One day, I'm there, I'm probably wearing like a butcher's schmuck like the rest of the family. I'm probably holding a cleaver or some sharp object. Looking probably more like like a mass murderer from a bad horror film.
Halloween.
Everyone else in the family is doing the same thing. We're all sitting there kind of working around it. My grandfather, my grandmother, my parents, my aunt. And I think some of my friends kind of rolled up the driveway and they look in and they just kind of like, you just kind of tell they kind of like stop maybe about 15 feet from
Like, what is this guy doing?
what's going on, right? I'm like, "What, you don't do this either?" And they're like, "No, we don't do anything like this." Like, this is why your lunch food is so shit.
Yes. So okay. So I'm gonna piggyback on that story right there. So I'm super Portuguese, but not to that extent. But my husband's family is. So I grew up not with matanças in my house, but I did have an uncle that was from São Jorge, and his family is also from São Jorge. So they would get together and they would do the matanças. So the first time I got a taste of the matanças at home was when I went to Santa Barbara to an event that they were having there. But anywho, now in my adult life, so I got to see it as a kid, but it was like later on. I was a teenager. I never experienced it as a child. And then in my adult life, my sogro, he does that regularly. So when it's like December, January time, winter time, even November is fine. They like to do that. They like to kill a pig or even a cow, and they will all get together at the house. And they will cut it in parts, and they will clean it, and they will organize everything. Like I've been there when they do it. I've never been a part of it. That's my own choice, but anyone can be a part of it. And so they organize everything by cuts, like what area of the animal it is, and then they ziploc it all. They write down what it is, which this is fantastic. And then they have those big industrial size freezers, like a lot of Portuguese people have. And we're saving it for a rainy day, right? For quarantine. And so we put everything in the freezer, and then we distribute it to one another. Like, okay, do you want this or do you want this? Blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of the way that my husband's family does it. And I love to see them do it because everything is super orchestrated. It's very organized. You can tell they've been doing this forever and ever. And they used to do it back in the Azores because they're from the Azores. And so when they lived there, this was a totally regular thing. My sogro had animals there. He has some animals here. So it was something that my husband grew up with as a baby, as a kid. He grew up with this. And like, for example, my sister-in-laws, they don't have no problem in touching blood or touching anything that has to do with the animal. Me, on the other hand, I'm like,
High five, Marcellus.
yes, yes. Oh, and the first time I ate Marcella, I actually loved it, and I had no clue what it was. I thought it was just like a different version of linguiça.
I've
And
never been big on it. I like, you know.
oh, see, I was
And
like in love with it.
I don't have a problem with what it is. So
Okay.
I'm a complete omnivore, so that doesn't bother me. But it's like bacalhau. I've never had bacalhau in any way that like really amazed me. Which
Oh yeah, you don't like bacalhau. That's right. I forgot that about you.
like I've had it that it's passable, but almost anything else from the ocean, like I eat tons of octopus and tuna and salmon and sibs and like clams and like I like
But no bacalhau.
limpets, like you name it. I'll put it on a grill or on a pan. I'm fine. But bacalhau, it's like take it or leave it. And
You
then
will eat
Marcellus,
the
I'm like,
lipids, but you won't eat the bacalhau. And for anyone watching,
yeah.
lipids is lapage. So he
Yeah,
will eat lapage.
I will eat lapage by the pound. Those things are like they are amazing. You know, like when Elena Fish Market got like a batch of them, like I was just like,
oh yes.
I actually remember like actually canceling one of my meetings and kind of going, can we reroute this for an hour? I need to go.
I need to go get the lipids right now before they go on.
They sell out so fast, right? So I went and picked up two bags, and they turned out really because they're easy to cook. They're just hard to get.
Do you have any special thing that you do to them to make them taste really good?
Well, I mean, the good thing is that it doesn't take much to make them taste good, right? Like as long as you get them fresh, I put them kind of back, facing downwards in a pan. A little bit of olive oil, a little bit of like either malagueta or piri piri.
Yep.
And then I like to use I have two, typical of a guy who thinks he wants to be a cook. I've got like 6 different kinds of salt. I got this one
salt, your gray salt, your other, your.
Well, no, I've got a Moroccan salt that has some kick to it. It's really good. It's got like smoked paprika in it, so it's like perfect for mixing with like for putting com pimentão. It's fantastic.
Yep.
And then I've actually got a Portuguese kosher salt, a sea salt, that's got citrus in it. So either of those work really, really well.
Where did you find the citrus salt at? Amazon or what?
Amazon, believe it or not. I was actually just it was when the pandemic first kicked in.
Yep.
I wanted to get some provisions, and I was not keen on going outside. So
yeah.
I'm like, I'll go order some morlatinhas, the sardinhas.
Yes.
And so of course, Amazon tells you like, oh, if you like this, you may like this. And so I start kind of like looking, and I'm like,
Amazon, you get me every time.
Portuguese food products. I'm like, okay, that looks good. Okay, I can get that. I can get that here. Oh, Portuguese salt. Okay, and then it was like, oh, it ends up being pretty good. So I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised. But yeah, as far as the food thing goes, that's always been, that's something that surprises people. Like the Marcellus, never got. I think I've had terrines maybe once in my entire life where I went, wow, that's super good. But it's never.
Yeah.
It's just it's like, oh, is it the blood? No, I don't care about that.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's totally the blood, because I loved it when I was eating it. Before I knew what it was, I was like, oh, I remember at that Matanza all day I was eating Marcella. And then the next day, I only found out the next day what it was when I went to the morning. Of course, the food's still all out. And I went to go get a Marcella. And I forgot who told me, but someone was like, I'm very surprised you like that. And I was like, oh, why is that? Well, I'm very surprised that you like that, and because that's made with the blood. I said, I was so confused. I'm like, what are you talking about, the blood? I'm like, the blood of the pig. That's why it's black, because it's the cooked blood. And I was like, after that, I was like, what the heck? No, I don't want that.
It's like there's a I think it's popular in Macau. There's a duck blood rice dish.
No.
I've been dying to try it because it looks amazing, but once again, it's one of those things where, like, Portuguese cuisine has so much variation in it.
Yes, of course. Yes.
As you kind of go across the span, like I remember RTP used to have a cooking show, it might have been like 10 years ago, and it was from Angola.
Oh,
And
wow.
the cool thing about it was the guy who was doing the show would just kind of travel to random places in Angola and cook on like a small fire grill in the middle of nowhere.
Oh my God, that's cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When I started seeing these dishes that like you kind of got to see the source of where, you know, Bidi Bidi kind of came into being.
Yeah.
But also, like all these different dishes that you can tell are not, their origin is not of Portugal, but clearly influenced by
Yep.
like the merging of the concepts. And I'm like, that looks good. That looks good. That looks good. That looks good.
Everything looks good.
Everything look because
I haven't had lunch yet, Joseph.
I you know.
Oh my God.
This,
by the way, we need to go to U.S.A. Is that your coffee? You drink it black or what?
Yeah, no, I drink my coffee black.
Nice.
But
we need to go to U.S.A. or Petiscos together. I know we were talking about that.
I will happily go to either. I mean, Petiscos is now totally open. I've now been there 4 times.
Fantastic.
I think I've had
there. I did
almost every single thing on the menu. I think the only things I haven't had yet is 1 or 2 of the appetizers, and I haven't had the francesinha yet, but that's definitely on the short list.
I've had the francesinha, and I had another platter, which I don't remember, and then I had, I think, 3 of their appetizers. So I've tried about 5 things off of the menu so far, and I'm going to keep trying more. But yes, that's right. So when we did our first episode, part 1 together, we were talking a little bit about Petiscos, and we talked about how they were open for call ordering and pickup and all that good stuff. But now they're actually open. So you can eat outside, and I think you can now eat indoors too.
We've got limited indoor seating, but I actually prefer, like, especially with the weather improving the way it is right now, I would definitely
outdoors want to beautiful
inside. They've just been really great. I think as a, like I said, as a food concept, like the last time we were talking about it, I'm like, I'm really happy to see something that is geared to attracting people other than us. I mean, I'm happy about it because I am one of us. Great, I can go there, I can get a whole bunch of things that I like. But I've had a few friends that I've either sent there or they heard about it through other means and then came and told me, oh, hey, I found the Portuguese place that's in your neighborhood. Have you been there yet? I'm like, of course I've been there.
Like, dude, I painted in there.
No, it's more like I'm Portuguese. Even if I hadn't known about it, somebody. Like, my mother would have told me like 5 minutes before opening. Do you know about Petiscos? Yeah, because that's the way the rumor mill works. That is another big Portuguese thing, you know.
That is true.
Don't say things about people. Why, Ma? That's what you do every Sunday after church.
Oh my God, he just went there right now. No.
I love my mom. My mom is a wonderful woman, but she is so typically like conservative Portuguese.
That's just typical Portuguese.
Yeah. And I like to harass her mercilessly because somebody has to, right? It's like,
of course. And you said she was from I know she was from a different island. Which island was she from?
She's from Santa Maria. Ela é dos Anjos.
Santa Maria.
Freguesia dos Anjos. I don't even know if it qualifies as a freguesia.
Cute. Freguesia dos Anjos?
Yeah, I think it's actually too small. I think it's Vila because it's too small. It's like
so she's a little angel herself. That's so cute.
Well, I mean, I think she's typical Portuguese height. She's like, you know, she's like 2'4".
Yeah.
You know,
2'4". 4'2".
You know, no, I think my mom's like 5 foot even. You know, but she is
pretty much the normal.
Yeah, she's the typical Portuguese mom. She's very tough. You know, I still have my brother and I continue to make jokes to my mother about the fact that we have flashbacks about wooden spoons or chinelas.
Oh, I was gonna say or chinelas.
Yeah, no,
or the vassoura,
Not the vassoura. I never really got the broom, but I have a guy on.
A pá das moscas também. No.
It was always a wooden spoon or a chinela or just a mão.
Or the mão.
I have a guy on my staff who's from El Salvador, and he was talking about. He was talking about like, you know, la chancla, and I said,
chancla, yes.
I know la chancla. We call it chinela.
Yeah, almost the same, chancla, chinela.
And I'm like, they're the same. They both are initially worn on the feet, and they are potentially fatal. So,
a very good weapon at hand.
my mother still like will occasionally pretend to threaten me with it. I'm like, put that down. You're gonna hurt yourself.
Oh my God, right? You're gonna break your little shoe on me. But there was two more things I wanted to talk with you about, which I thought it was so funny and so interesting, and it gave me flashbacks to when I used to do bingo at IS. I did go to bingo a few Fridays in a row. I was addicted for like 3 month stint. So can you talk about how you were like the boss bingo man in Santa Clara?
If there's anything in the Portuguese community that will give you extreme PTSD, it's get stuck calling bingo at a Portuguese hall. So I was on the board of directors for Sociedade do Espírito Santo in the mid-90s. I turned 21 and they made me a director I did 2 terms.
Oh, wow.
And of course, you get to say you're on the board of directors, but you also end up also doing the work. So you set up the crab feast and you clean the bar and you set up the tables and you run the bingo and you do all the. So you're doing you're running the nonprofit, but you're actually doing the work as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I did fairly regularly for a couple of hours every Friday night, and when you're in your early 20s and trying
21 at that, right?
That is the number one thing you want to be doing is calling bingo for a bunch of really cranky people who are high on like bingo paint and cheap beer. And this was the mid-90s. You could still smoke indoors. So
No, God, no, God, please.
So there was always the 2 people, usually at opposite ends, who would they were the like every evening was the same.
Oh my God, that's
3 B. The number 3. You're going too fast. B3. You're going too slow. And that would be the whole 2 hours.
No. Honestly, you're right. Because when I used to go to bingo, that was seriously the case. Like somebody would seriously scream, "You're going too fast. You're going too slow. What was that? I can't hear you. You need to talk louder." It's like, dude, calm down. Everybody calm down. Relax.
I never got you're not talking loud enough because, well, my voice projects and I'm pretty loud. I'm toned down right now. So it's the problem was always too fast, too slow. And it was always, I'm like, it's bingo. Okay. Like, come on, folks.
Get it together. Get it together.
But it was amazing to watch people get that wound up about bingo. And you could just tell, like, there would be always the woman. It was almost always a woman. Once in a while, you'd see a dude who would break out like 12 sheets of bingo.
Yes.
And they would like 2 fist. And you're like,
yes.
I'm like, you need a better hobby.
Dude, the most cards I've ever got or whatever I wanted to try to do was 2. And that was hard for me. 2.
Well, I'm seeing someone with like 6 to 10
I've
sheets.
Seen it with my own eyes too. I've seen that whole thing. I'm like, what? How do you do that, woman? But
that was the thing. Like, the bingo almost.
They're all like triple my age, and it's like I can only do 2, and you're doing 6 over there. I'm so confused.
I'm convinced. Like, and the funny thing was that most of the people who went to the bingo were not Portuguese.
Yeah. Oh, dude, yes, they were not. They were not Portuguese. I didn't know anybody there.
There was always like maybe a handful in the corner, but. But anyway, like the bingo thing, like running a hall was itself a very interesting experience because you got to watch like the culture clash of the generations as the old guard wanted to run everything exactly the same and the younger kids wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
And since if you were the young kid, you couldn't do crap. Like I mean, I had some. It was interesting. Like that was one of the reasons I eventually stepped away from the Portuguese community as an active kind of participant locally was because of that experience. Because I saw, my dad was very progressive, is very progressive and kind of a very broad kind of big tent kind of thinker and kind of knows that things change and that evolution needs to happen. And so that's kind of how I tend to think as well. But there are a lot of people, and probably still are, that really are, it's not just conservative in kind of the political sense, it's the like, I don't want anything to change.
No, 100%. And you're not the only one that I've talked to about this on Amá CONVERSA. I have talked about this with Joy Peixoto too, who is the president of Oakley Hall. And he's a young guy. He's only in his early 20s. And he's experiencing what you experienced back in the 90s. We're still experiencing that today. So again, we need to be progressive like your dad, and we need to be in an open tent like that and think outside the box, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if you want the community to grow or at least stop shrinking, you're going to have to be a bit more inclusive, and you're also going to have to kind of, I mean, this is like what we were talking the last go around, where
Yeah.
pop culture reflects the broader culture that it resides in, right? So if you look at Portuguese pop culture, it has evolved so much in the last 15, 20 years.
Yes.
And yet Portuguese diasporic culture has really not. Like,
Mhm.
I was talking with one of my relatives about some books I had picked up recently, and one of them was about the Portuguese Jews of Jamaica.
Oh, wow.
Right,
Wait,
like it was
repeat that again?
the Portuguese Jews of Jamaica. Basically, Jewish exiles that moved from South America into
That's
Jamaica.
interesting. That is interesting.
And I've been reading about it, like it's a fascinating topic, and they're like,
Yeah.
what? And at the same time, like, why are you reading that? And I'm like, because it's interesting.
Dude, no,
Like,
that's interesting to me. Like, okay, after you're done with that book, I want to read it because that's pretty cool. So then that leads me to my next question. You're reading these in English, obviously, and not in Portuguese, right?
I'm reading them in both. Some books I have in English, some are in Portuguese. Like I picked up I picked up actually one book of Fernando Pessoa in English, one in Portuguese pretty recently.
Yeah.
I just picked up, this is more of a textbook, Portuguese decolonization in the Indian Ocean world.
Oh,
So like,
wow. You're not messing around, dude.
no, and then Creole societies in the Portuguese Empire. So it's like, there's a bunch of interesting topics. All of it kind of fascinates me. I mean, you and I think we're talking about one of the books about the Portuguese in the old American West.
Yes.
It's like, these are all interesting stories. They all ultimately influence who we are now.
Yes.
And for the, just like as a person who did his undergrad in poli-sci, which obviously has a big amount of history to it, you can get frustrated even as an American citizen about how little most Americans know about kind of the evolution of the Republic. It's the same thing within, our own diaspora here, where it's like, they know os descobrimentos, they know about o Estado Novo because a lot of them emigrated here during that period. But beyond that, they really don't know anything. And certainly their children don't.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they're I mean, these are really kind of basic examples.
They're kind of closed in a bubble, in a little time warp, and they're not evolving. So
it's not even just that. It's like laying claim to your own legacy, right? Like a ukulele, like that. A ukulele is basically a Portuguese influenced instrument.
Yes.
And not that I want to say we should claim ownership of it, but we actually, like, that is part of our legacy. That's part of our influence.
Yep.
Own it, right? Be aware of it at the very least.
Yeah, and there's plenty of people that probably don't even know. So that's why with Amá CONVERSA, I love to talk with interesting people like yourself, because we're shining the light on topics that don't necessarily ever get talked about. So that's a very cool thing. And I hope that it piques people's interest to dig a little bit deeper into what we're talking about.
Yeah, we're actually pretty interesting once you start digging. I mean, not that I mind,
biased or anything, right?
For now, but it's like, well, it's like I said, like every time I go back to Lisboa, every time I, like some of the better shows on RTP, because there is still some pretty impressive trash on it.
Trash TV.
And I read, I will occasionally read articles from like Visão and Expresso and O Observador, like, so I'm trying to keep up with these different threads that are going on.
Yeah. You know what? It's pretty cool that you can read in Portuguese, and I encourage everyone alike to practice what Joseph's doing and reading in Portuguese, and I'm going to start doing the same. So I would love to borrow the Fernando Pessoa book in Portuguese. And also, I've been doing some of these interviews in Portuguese with people from Portugal and from the Azores. I had one from Germany, Susana Paz. I love her. She's a Fadista from Germany. And that one was in Portuguese too. So I've been practicing my Portuguese a lot. So I appreciate all the listeners for bearing with me as I go through this. But it's been a struggle, but it's also been, I can see where I'm improving and I can see where I still need to improve. So it's been fun, to say the least. And Joseph,
It's an intense language.
it really
Uh,
is. And today we don't have time to talk about you and your music, but I still want to talk with you about your music. So Joseph, in a few months from now, would you like to come on again and do a part 3 and talk about music?
I'm more than happy. This has been a fun experience in both cases.
Thank you.
This is something that doesn't get, like I said, I think that what you're doing here is incredibly useful. It goes towards kind of the like, hey, let's bring as many different voices that
Yes.
maybe just like hiding under the surface within the community itself, wherever they may be.
100%.
You know, from Hayward to Hamburg.
Yes, exactly.
And hopefully it helps to generate some interest, because I continue to say that I'm very interested in my identity, and not just as an artifact like, oh, I'm Portuguese, so I have to care. It's like, no, I am Portuguese. I'm aware of it. I grew up in the diaspora, but I know that there's so much more to it, and it would be nice to have some understanding of what that is, and maybe in some way by doing whatever I do, or by having that interest, have it be an active dialogue rather than just kind of passively going, oh, it's a fish.
Yep.
You know, and have it mean something more than just a hyphenated identifier. Oh, I'm a Portuguese-American.
100%. And that leads me to my new, thank you, Joseph, for that, by the way. I appreciate you, and I'm so happy that you like this, and I'm so happy that you like the show's concept and everything. So I appreciate you again. And like I said, I do want to talk to you again. So we're going to have a part 3 with Joseph Arruda. Thank you again so much for your time. It was an amazing conversa with you, just like the first one. I look forward to the next, and I look forward to seeing more of your artwork. So you guys, like I said, go see the beautiful mural at Petiscos, downtown San Jose, and that was made by our Joseph Arruda. So thank you again so much for being in Amá CONVERSA. Thank you, Beijos, and have the good rest of your day.
All right.
Thank you, ciao.